Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Roth and I'm an Italian style team member and brand ambassador for FRAMESI North America. Today I'm going to be showing you how to utilize 4 techniques to create a more lived-in look for this grown-out blonde. We're going to be using balayage, we're going to be using foilage, we're going to be using zone toning and microfoils. All those techniques are going to be put together to create a more lived-in look. I'm going to be using DECOLOR B Diamond Lightener and 30 volume. My preferred consistency for balayage is 1 to 1.5. You can mix this to the consistency that's right for you. When I'm mixing up my lightener, I like to make sure that I'm just folding it back and forth. I'm not doing a whole bunch of heavy mixing. I'm not using a whisk. The reason why is because you want to get that nice frosting and cake consistency. In the back, we have 3 sections. This first section down here is right underneath the occipital bone and goes to the mastoid up to the top of the ear on both sides. This is her ponytail section. This is that section that's going to get put up every time she puts on her ponytail, and you can see how dark this is. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to separate this into 2 sections, and we're going to balayage both of these sections on the underneath and bring it down into the bottom to brighten those ends. When you balayage, tension is super important. You want to make sure that you're pinching that hair. Zoe, I'm going to have you look down just like that. Perfect, thank you. I'm going to start with a smaller brush. And we're going to try to pick up all these little baby hairs down here. Lightly feathering towards that root. Don't be afraid to put the product on. We want a heavier saturation so that we get a really nice coverage on this underneath section. And because we're using a balayage technique, the interior dimension is still going to remain, and you'll just have a lot more brightness right up towards this corner. Once that's done, bring it down. Again, we're just going to keep that tension tight. I'm going to move to my bigger balayage brush. And I'm going to surface paint this entire section here to brighten up those ends. We're going to outline the edges. Again, keeping your touch light. And then we're just going to softly feather up into that middle. Be sure to keep a towel nearby. That way you can keep your hands clean and free of product. Now I'm going to set a piece of cotton right at her hairline. And this is just going to hold that in place so that when I lay this over, the weight of the lightener is not going to hold it down. And I'm just going to use a piece of plastic. And I'm going to set this right underneath my section. That way we don't get color all over her pretty cape. And I'm just going to fold the sides in just like that. This will give us just a little bit of insulation on that section. I always like to start in the middle of the section and kind of lay my product in. And then I move up to the tops of the section and start to feather forward. If you start feathering too far into the mid shaft, you will end up with skips in the color. What I mean by skips are those little marks, or maybe they look like bleed marks, whatever you want to call them. They're not pretty, so don't do it. But just Look at how much product I have on the underneath here. This completely covers the underneath of her hair. And then we're just softly feathering right up to that hairline. Okay, bring that section down and we paint the underneath. And remember, we're not going all the way up to the top, we're still leaving some depth and dimension. Grab a piece of cotton, stick that right behind the ear along that hairline. Gives you that nice little cushion. This is just my preference on how I like to do this. You can take the techniques I show you today and make them your own. This next section here, I want you to pay close attention. This goes from the occipital bone to the center juncture. She has a lot of grown out blonde right now, and what we're trying to do is give her a more lived in look that's a little more low maintenance and also add some more depth back into her hair color. The formula that I'm going to use is with FRAMCOLOR Eclectic. This is our demi-permanent line, and I have added in some DE and RDE into the formula. Those are our coppers and golds, and those are going to repigmentize some of these ends and make sure that her brown is nice and rich. All right. Clean off those hands. You can also change gloves if you feel better. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab some plastic and I'm just going to isolate this away. Now, for the rest of the back, we're going to bring down what's left of the center juncture and the crown. And this is going to be a combination of foilage. We're going to do some teasing, we're going to do some weaving. And just blend out the rest of these foil lines. In between, we're going to use a tip out technique. And all that means is I'm going to take my balayage brush and my paddle, and I'm gonna just paint on the ends of this hair and make sure that it's as bright as everything else. I will change to 20 volume just to make sure that we're not over processing those ends. I'm gonna be working in about a 2-finger space sectioning. If you need a guide, take your 2 fingers, just about like that. Those are gonna be my guide for my spacing all the way up for these sections. I'm going to take my bigger paintbrush. Zoe, if you would please lean forward. There you go, thank you. We're going to start in the mid shaft. Get that product on there nice and thick. Make sure your tension is strong. Get that product in there. And then slowly feather towards that top. Make sure that you pick that hair up, keep your tension, pick up that hair and look at the underneath. And we're gonna just softly paint on that underneath as well, making sure that we don't have any little lines of demarcation under here, so we keep everything nice and soft and smooth. with our teasy lights. This first one is going to be a boulder weave. Depending on how wide her hair is right there. There's no right or wrong on how many sections you take, it's your preference. All right, look down again for me. Perfect. Now, when we're teasing, we need to make sure that we're teasing with a purpose. We don't just start going in at the root and just teasing it like we're about to give our Grandma Ida a set for a week. What we need to do is we need to push back all these small hairs so we get a really nice, soft, blended look. You're going to start in the mid shaft, and we're going to push forward. You can see all those hairs start to move forward, right through there. I'm just going to bring that one out a little bit. But you're going to get a nice little blend right there when we end up pulling these out. I'm going to take my small brush. You're going to paint just into that tease, right at where that tease is meeting your hair. If you get these little pieces, just kind of fold them out of the way. It's not going to mess with anything, don't worry. Pick up your teased section. Make sure you have no lines of demarcation there. Keep the blend really soft. Bring that back down. Add my little pillow. And here is where I'm going to start isolating with foil. Again, we're trying to create that visual of dark to light to lightest. Right there. Just like that. Now this time we're going to make that weave a little bit smaller. And we're going to tease this a little bit closer. This time I'm actually going to take my board . I'm going to get a little bit closer. Now once you get up where that tease is, I'm going to turn my brush vertical and I'm just going to softly feather up into that tease. As we reach the top of her head, you're going to see that these blonde ends are much lighter. So we're not going to take that 30 volume all the way down into those ends. So we're just going to leave those out. We're going to weave again. Taking another smaller section. The cool thing about these techniques is that you can use these any way you'd like. The closer you tease to the root, the less of a drop you'll have. The farther down you tease, the more root you will create. Now, as I get up into her crown, I am going to start more of a micro weave. Very fine, and these will not be teased. I'm creating these techniques, I like to leave these foils flat instead of folding them up into tight little packets. It's just my personal preference. You can do it however you'd like. I just feel like I get a much more even saturation and processing of color when I do it this way. If your section is too wide, you can just split this in half and do 2 weaves instead of 1. Now that we're moving to the front of the face, I did switch to 20 volume. The reason why I've switched to 20 volume is because we're going to be taking finer, more micro-weaved sections to create those money pieces and brighter areas around her face, so we just want those to process just a little bit slower. The first section is going to be a thin slice. You want to be able to see through that slice. Again, her ends are already blonde, so we won't be painting those. We're just getting the dark color. Depending on how bold your guest wants her money piece is going to depend on how many of those slices you're going to take. For us today, we're going to do a really soft money piece where you can see that dimension, but we don't want her to look like 90s Barbie. So for her, I did 2 slices, and my top section is going to be a weave. This will just soften that up a little bit. Next, we're going to work on her hairline around her face. Every guest is different, so pay attention to how their hair grows. And you can see she's a little bit finer right here by her temple. So we want to just make sure that we're not over foiling in that area. For a softer look, instead of foiling from the underneath, I'm actually going to foil from the top with a really fine weave. This is going to give her that brightness there still, but it's going to leave those smaller baby hairs out. And this way, as it grows out, it'll grow out softly because you'll have some of that natural root color in between. This next section is going to be a teasy light. And again, we tease with a purpose. We are doing this so that we can allow for a little bit of blend, but still brightness around the face. Hold your section tight, bring it together, start in that mid shaft where you're holding, and tease towards that root. Okay, now those ends are already nice and light, so we're not going to be painting those. Just going to stick one foil right on top of the other, and just to keep it a little neater, I am going to fold these in on the corners so that it just stays in place a little bit easier for me. Next section is going to be a weave. Last section is a teasy light. And we're just going to paint that center. Split this off to the parietal ridge. Can everybody see that? There we go. This is your parietal ridge section. This is going to be a low light. This low light is going to match the low lights that we created in the back to give that full effect of that depth all the way through the hair. What I'm going to do is actually lay a foil, and I'm going to paint them straight back. You don't have to get all the way to the root. We're going to be zone toning later. What we want to make sure is that we really get this blonde filled in. And for that top half of the crown section, we're going to be doing weaves all the way up. If you want to create more depth in between, leave more hair out. If you want more blonde coverage, don't leave as much space in between your foils. So if you notice in this foil on the right side, she's got a lot of blonde, but on this left side, she's got a little bit of brown that comes all the way through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of push the blonde off to the side of the foil. And then I'm going to continue with my application down just a little bit farther on the left side so I can get that brown covered and stick it out the other side. Since her root coverage goes a little further down in this section, instead of folding this all the way up, I'm going to just place another foil right on top so that that processes evenly. These last two sections are going to be a teasy light, just to keep that base blended. Teasing those last two sections is going to give you a really nice blend right at the root, and then right underneath that you're going to have those really nice bright pops of blonde. They're going to shoot through from underneath here, connecting to the front money pieces that we created. And now we flip over and do the same thing on the other side. So remember, just like the other side, we did 2 slices and then a weave for her money piece. again, make sure we're paying attention to that hairline. You can see it's the same as the other side. So I'm just going to section this away, and we're going to weave from the top instead of the underneath. I'm always paying special attention to the hairlines. I feel like with these looks, this is like the most important because this is what your guest is going to see in the mirror every day. And you don't want to have any lines of demarcation. And especially when we're working on this softer grow out, you want to make sure that that placement is really soft. All right, I'm gonna let the rest of that hairline down and we're gonna do teasy lights for the rest. This side is a little bit finer than the other, so I'm only gonna actually have 2. Last one, and then we move up into the crown. Okay, now for this crown section, remember, we're going to split this right at the parietal ridge. And that's going to be your low light. Just stick a foil under there, make sure it doesn't touch my blonde. And remember, it's okay that we're not going all the way up to the root, because during the zone toning portion, we will be covering that root. This is just to start the process and low light and fill in that blonde hair. And for the remaining portion of the crown, we're just going to do those weaves all the way up. I don't know if you can see, but she does have just probably, I would say maybe 10% gray as well. When I'm foiling in the top of the hair, I like to make sure that my foils mimic the density of where those grays are so that I can pick them up as well and blend them in. These techniques are very usable in the salon. We do these every day. Balayage, foilage, teasy lights, baby lights, micro lights, whatever you want to call them. This is how our guests are coming into the salon, whether they're new or existing and they're looking for a change or something more low maintenance. Getting familiar with these 4 techniques really expands your arsenal on creating all of those lived-in looks. These last 2 are teased. So now what we're going to do is any remaining hair that's left out, I'm just going to take my 20 volume that I have and I'm just gonna pull these pieces out, and I'm just gonna tip out those ends so that we have that same brightness all the way throughout. Now that she's finished processing and all rinsed out, we're going to begin our zone toning technique. I'm going to be using FRAMCOLor Eclectic to do her zone toning. I love this demi-permanent color. It's ammonia-free and PPD-free. It also is fragrance-free. There is virtually no smell to this at all, which is really nice, and it's very comfortable on your client's scalp. It has a really, really great consistency. We're gonna be using those shakers again to do those, and you're gonna see how easily those mix together and they just glide through the hair. For her base formula and root shadow, I'm going to be using FRAMCOLor Eclectic 5IN and 6IN equal parts. I'm going to be using 15 volume for her base. The reason why is she does have a little bit of gray, and FRAMCOLor Eclectic will cover gray up to 100% with the IN series. For her blonde, I'm going to be using FRAMCOLor Eclectic 8CT and 9PE equal parts. The good thing about the CT series is they are flash toners, and what that means is you can process your toners in 5 to 7 minutes when you use these, and as long as you mix them equal parts with your other toner colors, you can still get that shorter processing time.